Not going. A Democratic lawmaker from Michigan is given permission to visit relatives in the West Bank. We'll explain why she says she's no longer interested in making the trip. Trade war. The Catholic perspective on the battle over tariffs between the United States and China. Reaching out. Abby Johnson tells us her new plan to try and convert abortion clinic workers. And hidden treasure. We take you inside a historic church in Rome with a connection to two saints. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, August 16, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. A Democratic lawmaker from Michigan is given permission by Israel to enter the West Bank. Then she decides not to go. Representative Rashida Tlaib wanted to visit Palestinian relatives there. She wrote a letter requesting the visit on humanitarian grounds. She changed her mind after, saying Israel's oppressive conditions aim to humiliate her. Yesterday, she and Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota were denied entry to Israel for their support of an international boycott of the country. President Donald Trump initially said Israel would show great weakness if it welcomed the Democratic representatives. He claims the congresswomen hate Jewish people. Last night at a campaign rally, the president turned his attention to his Democratic challengers in 2020 and the U.S. economy. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Wyatt, during a drop in the Dow Jones, the president hit the road to assure supporters in New Hampshire. He says the U.S. still has the world's hottest economy. And looking ahead to 2020, the president claims there's really only one path forward.
Whether you love me or hate me, you gotta vote for me.
Speaking to a crowd of supporters in New Hampshire, President Trump said their financial security and 401ks depend on his reelection.
See, the bottom line is, I know you like me, and this room is a love fest, I know that, but you have no choice but to vote for me.
The president sought to reassure his supporters about the state of the U.S. economy despite the stock market volatility. And he was in full campaign mode last night, blasting Democrats and ultimately saying he sort of hopes former Vice President Joe Biden gets the Democratic presidential nomination.
I think Sleepy Joe may be able to limp across the finish line.
It was the president's first rally since the mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton killed 31 people and wounded dozens more. The shootings have reignited calls for Congress to take immediate action to reduce gun violence. Democrats demand greater gun control, while the president says it's not the gun that pulls the trigger.
We are working very hard to make sure we keep guns out of the hands of insane people and those who are mentally sick and shouldn't have guns.
Without providing specific details, President Trump advocated for expanding the number of facilities to house the mentally ill.
We will be taking mentally deranged and dangerous people off of the street. We're going to have to give major consideration to building new facilities for those in need. We have to do it.
And President Trump defended unborn babies again last night in New Hampshire. He said top Democrats support late-term abortion, and Republicans, he said, believe every child is a sacred gift of God, and he said that's why he's calling on Congress to prohibit late-term abortions. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. 3 Democratic presidential candidates traveled to Georgia today. They courted faith voters in the first day of the Black Church PAC Presidential Candidate Forum in Atlanta.
Freedom does not belong to one political party. Patriotism does not belong to one political party. And as everybody here knows, God does not belong to a political party in this country.
In addition to presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, both Senator Cory Booker and former Housing Secretary Julian Castro addressed the conference today. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders will speak tomorrow. All of the Democratic candidates running for president have taken firm pro-abortion stances. The Diocese of Scranton in Pennsylvania has begun an investigation into allegations of misconduct against the rector of the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C. Monsignor Walter Rossi is from Scranton and remains under that diocese's jurisdiction, but he served at the National Shrine for more than 20 years. Concerns were raised about Rossi's to Washington's Archbishop Wilton Gregory during a question and answer session at a Theology on Tap event Tuesday night. Joining us now is Edward Condon, D.C. Bureau Chief for Catholic News Agency. Ed, welcome back in. Can you tell us about the allegations against Monsignor Rossi?
Well, we're not really sure what allegations have triggered this investigation. A number of right-wing blogs and websites have carried a string of allegations that didn't seem to have much in the way of substance to them for more than a year now. He was most recently in June named by former Papal Nuncio of the United States Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano as being part of what he called a gay mafia, and saying that there was documentation in the nunciature in Washington relating to some sort of misconduct or inappropriate behavior towards university students who were serving at the shrine. But we really don't know what's triggered this particular investigation.
Interesting. I remember this question being asked Tuesday night at the young adult event. I was there listening. It was one of many serious questions addressed to the Archbishop. Is it unusual for an investigation, though, to be started from a question and answer networking session at an event like this?
Yes, I think so. The impression I got the following day when we were sort of calling around the Diocese of Scranton, the Basilica itself, and also the Archdiocese of Washington was that perhaps maybe this caught them somewhat on the hop. I don't know if Archbishop Gregory was intending to announce an investigation that he already had in mind, but it certainly looked like he was responding to a question openly and honestly, and things went on from there. Which, speaks to his credit. If this really is a situation that he was otherwise unaware of, which is what he said during his answers, then this is exactly the sort of response we would see, which is he said, well, if that's the case, I wasn't aware of that, I'd like to see an investigation, and 24 hours later, we appear to have one.
Okay, and we'll be watching all the details. Switching gears a little bit, earlier this week, New York opened a one-year window for survivors of abuse to file claims that have been past the statute of limitations before, so decades past. What does this mean for the Catholic Church in the state of New York?
Well, I think the state of New York is really seeing a deluge of lawsuits that are being filed into this window, more than 400. We're not exactly sure how many of them directly relate to the Catholic Church. Other organizations like schools, the Boy Scouts have been named as well. I think several were filed against one doctor. So we're really seeing, the opening of the floodgates here for a lot of past cases to be brought back into light. But most troublingly for the Church is it doesn't really know how to respond to these cases in court, because on the one hand, you want to vigorously contest allegations that you think might not be true, which can be the case in some cases. But on the other hand, you want to show real sensitivity to victims of abuse. You don't want to appear to be sort of stonewalling or anything like that. So it's a very fine line to tread for the Church in responding to these allegations, particularly when they date back, in some cases, many decades. Proof is hard to come by in those circumstances, so it's hard to know where to come down.
One of the lawsuits is against South Carolina Bishop Robert Guglielmone. It dates from his time back in Rockville Center, New York. He denies the claims, but what can you tell us about this case in particular?
Well, the lawsuit filed against the bishop, he's now serving in Charleston, concerns the alleged sexual abuse of a young man starting at the age of 8, going on for several years, but we really don't have any more details than that. I mean, we're looking at these things just by the court filings, so circumstances of time, place, all the kinds of things that you would hope would come out in the course of a court proceeding, civil or criminal, that would allow us to evaluate sort of the fact pattern and that sort of thing. We don't have right now. So, I mean, it's important to underscore that the bishop in this case is very much firmly insisted on his innocence and said he looks forward to fully cooperating both with the Vatican investigation and with civil authorities, and saying that he's going to vindicate his name. But I think what we're seeing is a lot of cases are going to be like this. It's one person's word against another, and there's not a lot we can do to show a lot of proof one way or another, because we're going back in some cases as much as 40 years. And there's a reason we have the statute of limitations, because past a certain point, it becomes hard to prove these things.
And obviously our news networks will continue to follow all of this as we gain more information about these hundreds of cases, like you say, that are just now coming out. Edward Condon, D.C. Bureau Chief for Catholic News Agency. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Pope Francis sends a video message to a new abuse prevention center in Chile.
Cada vez más a los menores de todo lo que sea abuso, de todo lo que sea manipulación.
The Holy Father says the center is conducting research and seeks policies to save children from every sort of abuse. It also is finding ways to prevent misconduct from happening in the future. The center is being run in part by the Catholic University of Chile. The U.S. will revoke visas for crew members on an Iranian oil tanker seized by authorities in Gibraltar for sanctions violations. The tanker was released yesterday. The State Department said it intends to fully enforce all U.S. sanctions related to Iranian oil exports, despite the decision by Gibraltar. North Korea fires 2 more missiles. They landed in the water between the Korean peninsula and Japan. Pyongyang also says it has no current plans to speak with South Korea. North Korean officials are unhappy Seoul and the United States are holding joint military exercises. Chinese police are conducting exercises across from Hong Kong. The paramilitary People's Armed Police marched and practiced crowded control tactics at a sports complex in Shenzhen. There are worries there is a threat to the pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. The government in Beijing says the demonstrations are beginning to resemble terrorism. The Trump administration is fighting China over allegations Beijing steals trade secrets. In May, President Trump imposed sanctions on the Chinese company Huawei, blocking its access to American technology. He cited security concerns, but Chinese officials saw it as an attempt to cripple their country's first big global tech brand. Now the president says he will impose a tariff hike on September 1st. China is calling for retaliation if that hike goes into effect. Joining us now is Father Cristian Mendoza. He's a Catholic social teaching professor at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. Father, welcome back. Catholic social teaching is about matters of human dignity and the common good. Now, some might not see a connection between trade and tariffs and Catholic doctrine. What does the Church teach?
Well, actually, what the Church is worried about is the human dignity of the people behind all these economic and political trades. For example, think about Pope Benedict XVI. He was very interested about the economic development of the world. And not because he wanted to invest in something, but because he knew that in the future some enterprises from India and China will buy enterprises from Europe. And that acquisition will not only be economic, that will be a cultural acquisition. That's why Pope Benedict XVI wanted a professor from Italy to explain him how the economy works. And this is what it's all about the human dignity behind those moments of trade.
So obviously, Pope Benedict took this seriously. So many others at the Vatican do. Why should Catholics around the world care about tariffs or care about the potential for a trade war?
Well, we live today in a society that needs more than economic exchange. And you see how Pope Francis constantly tells us with simple words that when you give alms, don't just give the coin, but look at the eyes of the other. Touch his hands. What the Pope is saying that this world needs more than just an exchange. And that's why Catholics are worried when we just focus on the gaining of the economic world. We have to do something different. Last summer, I had the chance to visit Hong Kong, and you could see the desire of a lot of people to find God, to understand what is the church all about. And that's why today, when we have all these issues, is a moment to think if we are focusing on the human side or if we are focusing only on this war of trade.
So many challenges when you think about this in terms of being a global economy now. What do you think lawmakers can do, especially if they're Catholic, to highlight these kinds of issues in a way that benefits everyone for the common good?
Well, think that every person who has faith can do more for society than if they just think about their own interest. When you think about your family, when you think about your nation, when you think about others as people like yourself, you try to do something for them. What faith gives to all these political, social, and economic world is the understanding that the other is like me. It doesn't matter if he has another ethnicity, it doesn't matter if he has another citizenship, he's one like me. And that's why I can respect him and I can be with him. This is what it's all about. And I think it's essential for the development of the world to believe that the others are people with which to communicate and to be in dialogue with.
Well, as Catholics, like you say, it's so important that we see how essential it is to view these issues through the eyes of faith. Father Cristian Mendoza, professor at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Coming up, why copies of the pro-life movie Unplanned are being sent to abortion clinics. A judge places New Jersey's medically assisted suicide law on hold. The The ruling comes after a doctor filed a lawsuit which says the measure is an affront to medical professionals who practice their religion. The doctor who filed the suit is an Orthodox Jew. Pro-life leader Abby Johnson is reaching out to abortion clinic workers in a new way. Johnson is sending copies of the movie Unplanned to every abortion clinic in the United States. The film portrays the story of her conversion from Planned Parenthood clinic director to pro-life leader. She left her job after witnessing an abortion. Johnson is the founder of And Then There Were None, which helps abortion clinic workers find different jobs. Unplanned was released this week on DVD. Joining us now is Abby Johnson, founder of the pro-life ministry And Then There Were None. She joins us via Skype from Austin, Texas. Abby, welcome back to the newscast. What inspired you to send this movie, which is about your experience, to abortion clinic workers all across the country?
Well, I mean, we want these workers to be able to see the truth that's in the film and to be able to hopefully have a moment where they recognize, hey, this is my story too. And then of course we have And Then There Were None. We have the ministry that can help them leave, that can provide that transitional financial help, job resources, and can get them into a relationship with Christ to really help them find healing.
What do you think it is about either your story or the way it's told in the film that will encourage these workers to make a similar decision and walk away from Planned Parenthood?
Well, one thing that was really important to me was that we did not vilify or demonize abortion clinic workers. And we did a really good job of showing people that these are just everyday women who are working in these clinics. They have families, they have children, their wives, and a lot of times they just need a lifeline. They just need that hand up to help them get out.
What do you think is the central message, the most important thing you hope they'll take away from the film?
That conversion is possible, that there is a place for them to go that will help them, that will support them with open arms, and that they are welcome here in this movement, that they are welcome among us.
You had mentioned the work that you do with your ministry. I'm hoping you can expand a little bit on that. If someone watching this film wants to leave their job in the abortion industry, what would you advise them to do? What are the steps?
So they can go to our website, which is abortionworker.com. We have a 24-hour hotline that they can call anytime, day or night. Someone will pick up. And we just start the process with them, getting to know them, talking to them, learning a little bit about their situation, how they got involved with the abortion industry and why they want to leave. And then we want to talk to them about how we can best help them and how we can best provide for their needs at that time.
Tell me about the impact of the film since it was released.
It's been pretty incredible. We have referred thousands and thousands of men and women to post-abortion healing programs, abortion recovery programs. But we have also helped dozens of clinic workers, people who went to go watch the film as critics, found truth, walked out and said, I have got to get out of the abortion industry. Can you help me? So the impact has really been amazing. And it's been tremendous just to be part of something that God is doing.
How rewarding is that feeling, and what kind of feedback do they tell you once they get out of it, once they get a new job and they come back?
It's incredibly rewarding. I mean, I think anytime that we have something in our past that we're allowing God to use, you hope that it's going to have an impact on someone else. You pray that it will. And so being able to actually see this and to see the fruit from what God is doing is really amazing, because many times in the pro-life movement, we don't see the fruit. We go and stand outside of abortion clinics. We know that babies are saved, but we don't actually get to see it. But being able to see it is really incredible, and being able to partner with God, with Him as the lead is really amazing. But what we're doing here is it's really a movement. We have created a movement. Unplanned is now going international. We have releases taking place all over the world. So this is really going to impact, hopefully, many, many nations.
Well, profound sounds like the right word to use in this context. And obviously, as you know, Abby, our EWTN viewers will continue to pray for your pro-life ministry. Abby Johnson, founder of the Pro-Life Ministry, and Then There Were None. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The husband of a woman killed earlier this month by a gunman in El Paso, Texas, has invited the world to join him in remembering his wife. Since the announcement, condolence notes and flowers have poured in for Antonio Bosco and his deceased wife, Margie Record. The funeral is scheduled for tonight. The funeral director says they had to move the service to a bigger facility because of the crowd that is now expected to attend. Several funeral homes in the El Paso area are offering free services after the shooting. Up next, we take you inside one of Rome's historic churches. Tonight, we take you inside one of Rome's hidden treasures, a historic church with connections to two great saints. Our Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren reports.
The Church of San Girolamo della Carità, or St. Jerome of Charity, is built on what was once the home of a Roman noblewoman. Pope Damasus summoned Jerome to Rome in 382. His task, to translate the Bible into Latin.
¿Dónde se alojaba? Aquí.
Father Philip Goyret, the rector of the church, tells us this is where he lived. The church was also home to another saint, Philip Neri, known as the third apostle of Rome. Visitors can find a chapel dedicated to the 16th century Italian who founded the congregation of the Oratory. But it's the artistic treasure that leaves a lasting impression for pilgrims. This is the Spada Chapel, dedicated to a wealthy Roman family. On the right, we see Giovanni Spada, a close collaborator of Pope Innocent IV. And on the left, Bernardino Spada, an influential cardinal who lived in the 7th century. Two angels support a veil that appears as light as a feather, but is made of marble. Other family members are depicted around the chapel.
De hecho, es una maravilla y es muy única.
Father Philip says the work is a unique wonder, an artistic jewel many pilgrims don't get the privilege of seeing. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Our thanks to Alan Holdren and to the EWTN Vaticano team for that report. It is a great blessing that we can show you the historic building itself and tell you about its significance to the church. And with that, we conclude our newscast for tonight and for this week. We thank you for watching. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.